On episode 2045 of Joe Rogan's podcast, he and famous Irish-British comedian Jimmy Carr take a surprising turn from cracking jokes to cracking mysteries. Their conversation dives straight into UFOs and the possibility of advanced technology hiding in plain sight. What starts as comedy suddenly feels like a peek behind the curtain of the unknown? Have a look.
I have a feeling that I'm open to the idea of us being visited for sure. I am also very convinced that some of these are either China's, Russia's, or ours.
What happened with New Jersey earlier? Remember earlier in the year?
Good question.
Like, it feels like the news cycle, it's actually back to Eric Weinstein. It's that thing of like anti-interesting. That's such an interesting story that was in the news cycle for like 24 hours, and they went, oh, okay.
They killed it.
Nothing, I guess.
They
Nothing to see
about
there.
it all the time, and then they killed it. I think they're probably searching for something. The primary theory that I've heard from the tinfoil hat brigade is that there was a warhead that was unaccounted for. There was a nuclear warhead. You know,
Have you seen the numbers on that?
Yeah.
It's the broken arrows, they call them. And apparently there's like 18 broken arrows. And you go, what's a broken arrow? Well, it's a thermonuclear missile, and we don't know where it is.
Yeah.
We've misplaced that.
Yeah.
That's not great news, is it?
So the fear was that there was somehow or another, through some port of entry or something, they had made it into the United States. And so these drones were using some sort of gamma ray detection devices, some top secret stuff where they're flying over these areas in a consistent grid and trying to get a reading, see if they could find that thing. Because if that thing exists, you'd be able to get a reading and figure out, okay, there's something down there that's emitting a very unusual signal. We might have found it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the argument for life visiting us, is the idea that we split the atom. And somehow that's like a fire alarm in the universe.
That's why the club, the mothership, the rooms are named Fat Man and Little Boy.
Yeah.
That's why.
Oh, because after
because after the bombs is when the UFO phenomenon really hyped up, really increased radically. The Kenneth Arnold sighting, the famous, where the term flying saucer was coined, that was in the 1950s. I want to say that's like 52. And then
it feels like, I don't know, 10 years ago, talking about being visited by aliens was like absolutely tinfoil.
Yeah.
And now politicians are asking questions, and we kind of want to know more, and yet it feels like it's kind of a news story that wouldn't be surprising now.
Right. Well, I think that's the goal. Like, the goal is to normalize it. And if you were a government, we had Hal Puthoff on, who's a physicist who, during the Bush administration, was contracted along with several other scientists to devise a list. This was the mandate. They came to them and had said, here's the issue. We have crashed UFOs, and we have recovered biological entities that are not of this world. What would be the pros? And they didn't tell them if this was true or not. They said, what would be the pros of disclosure? What would be the cons? And I want you to attach a numerical value to each one. So disruption of government, religion, politics, all these different things. Like, what would happen to the nuclear family? Like, what happens if we know we're not alone? What happens if we are visited on a consistent basis? What happens? And when they did it at the end, all of the scientists had achieved similar conclusions that the cons outweighed the pros in terms of numbers. And so because of that, they decided not to disclose.
Now, down in our list in another podcast, number 2362, he and comedian Ralph Barbosa dive headfirst into one of the most chilling UFO encounters ever told, the Travis Walton abduction. A true story so bizarre it inspired a Hollywood movie, and one that still fuels debates today. Was it a hoax, or undeniable proof that we're not alone? Let's watch this together.
Would you say this guy's name is Travis?
That's Travis Walton. And he's a guy that got abducted, allegedly, by some sort of a UFO in the 1970s. And the story was so crazy that it became a movie. It's called Fire in the Sky. And I don't know, like I said, I don't know if he's telling the truth, but it's very compelling. He doesn't seem like a liar, and he's been telling the exact same story for 40 plus years.
I think he's telling the truth.
You think so?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know anybody. I mean, personally, I don't know anybody who's kept up alive for that long.
There's got to be someone. There's got to be someone that's like, I think people can make a story up and then only keep that lie. Usually, generally, when people lie about stuff, they'll lie about a bunch of stuff, especially something that crazy. They took me aboard a UFO and they fixed me. So this is the story. The story was these guys were all loggers in Arizona. And so they're driving down this logging road and they see some crazy light in the sky and it goes into this area. They pull off to the side of the road. They walk towards it and there's this disc that's like hovering, this glowing disc. He walks towards it and he got really close to it and he got hit with a beam of light and he falls back. Like that's supposedly what it looked like. That's the art depiction of it, what these guys saw. He gets hit with this beam of light and they take off. They're like, fuck. And they did jump back in the truck and take off. He's lying on the ground and they get like 5 minutes away and they're yelling at each other. We got to go back. We got to go get him. They were scared. And so they're like, fuck it, let's go back. So they go back to go get their friend and he's gone. So 5 days later, there's a manhunt for him. Nobody can find him. 5 days later, he shows up, walks into town. It doesn't look like he's starving to death. He's not out of water. Doesn't look like he's been living in the woods. It just looks like just like a normal day. And he tells this crazy story. He tells this story that he got abducted. They took him aboard this craft and fixed his body because the beam of light that came out of the ship from whatever it was, whatever energy source it was, fucked his body up. They repaired it and they communicated with him telepathically while they were on the ship.
On episode 2194 of the Joe Rogan Experience, Joe sits down with former Pentagon insider Luis Elizondo, and the conversation goes far beyond speculation. From UFOs that seem to bend the laws of physics and even reports of mysterious craft, this is where secrets meet reality. Let's dive in.
What's the most compelling modern thing that you've seen?
Oh my God, I can't talk about it, unfortunately. This is my frustration, Joe, because I know what I've seen. I know what my colleagues are seeing, right? And to this day, there's video that's coming in on a regular routine basis that is very, very compelling. And
how do they hide this stuff from the general public?
Well, we have classified systems. We hide a lot.
Right, but how is it getting filmed? Is any of it getting filmed by the general public, or is all this military stuff?
So let me backtrack a little bit. There's a general public that is filming stuff, but from a Department of Defense perspective, our focus, now Aero is a different story, but when I was in the government, we had to be very, very careful of something that we called intelligence oversight. Back in the 60s and 70s, the U.S. intelligence apparatus, particularly in the Department of Defense, was kind of naughty. They were doing things they shouldn't do. They were spying on students and they were spying on American citizens.
You don't say.
Things. Yeah.
Crazy.
Say it isn't so. So Congress passed some laws and said, okay, you can no longer do this kind of stuff on American citizens, right? You can't conduct intelligence operations on American citizens. You can't do it. It's illegal, right? So you have Executive Order 12333 and all these other rules and laws and DOD 5240.1 that all come out and say no mas. So Department of Defense is supposed to focus on military. That's it. You don't bring in U.S. persons' information and ingest them into a Department of Defense database, especially a Department of Defense intelligence database. That's a super no-no. That's called U.S. persons' information, and it's pretty much verboten. So our focus was looking specifically at military-sourced information. I was not focusing at all on what the private citizens were seeing because at the end of the day, we couldn't use it. You can't do anything with it.
And it seems like you got plenty of compelling footage from the military.
Overwhelming. There's absolutely no doubt that we didn't have to look at civilian data because we had better collection sensor systems from the military that was looking at stuff and giving us better insight.
If you can't tell us about, can you give us some sort of an understanding of like what you're talking about?
Yeah, sure.
Without being specific?
Yeah, let me see. Okay. Yeah. There is a video, high resolution video of, I can't say what platform it was taken from. I can't say where it was taken from,
okay.
But an object that, do you know how large an offshore oil derrick is? They're huge. Right?
Yeah.
They're like almost like a small city, right? They're like one city block. They're huge. They're enormous things. There is a video that shows one of these objects underwater that goes by. The speed was calculated between 450 and 550 knots underwater, and it was bigger than the offshore derrick that it was passing, because you could see in the video the offshore derrick, and you could see this thing zip right by it.
Jesus.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of them, right? A lot of them are reported as being transmedium.
Right. So that exactly. Why do we use the term UAP, right? Now it's unidentified anomalous phenomenon, because it's all domain. Initially it was UFO, unidentified flying object. And for several reasons, they changed the name. One of them, not just because of stigma like people think, but because the word flying object means flight. And
Right.
you have to have wings to fly. That's flight. And these things don't have wings. So that term, we're not even sure is even accurate anymore, because they're not necessarily flying. We see them underwater. We see them super high altitude. So the term was changed to unidentified aerial phenomenon. But again, that did not encompass all the observations we were seeing. So now the term UAP, I think the latest description of it is unidentified anomalous phenomenon, to help describe this multi-domain or transmedium characteristic that we are beginning to see and record that these things can do. And that is, I'm going to, if I can digress for a second, because that's super important, Joe. We have transmedium vehicles, right? We have things like seaplanes, and it's a plane and it can float on water. But let's face it, a seaplane is neither a really good plane or a really good boat, because it's a compromise. It's a design compromise between an object that you want to perform in the air and in the sea. And that's why it's neither really good at both. Same thing with, for example, the space shuttle. It goes out into space and it can glide down, but it's not a very good airplane, comes down like a brick,
Right.
because there's design compromises and performance compromises. But what we are seeing doesn't have any of that attributable compromise. It's not, these objects aren't slowing down. They're not changing their performance capabilities. They can do the same thing that we're seeing in the air and possibly in space and even underwater. So that is a fundamentally different type of technology than we are used to dealing with.
Is the assumption that they are doing something with space-time and gravity around them, rather than using something like a jet propulsion engine that blasts fire out the back and it makes it go fast forward?
Right.
That they're doing something that alters the gravity around them.
Yeah. So
and that's why they can go through everything.
Yeah. So we had some of the best scientists on the team, folks like Dr. Hal Puthoff and some other folks that I'm not allowed to say their names, Dr. Eric Davis and some others, that were doing the calculations, mathematical calculations on how this is possible. And the consensus was by the scientists, not me, because I'm not a physics expert, I'm not an astrophysicist. They were saying that, so let me back up here. Initially, the government for years was trying to identify the different exotic technologies that could explain the different performance characteristics. And it was during the ATIP years that the scientists had this consensus that if you had one type of technology, if you could do one thing, all these other observables now become possible. Kind of think of like a unifying theory. And so if you had the ability to create this bubble around you in a localized area that insulated you from the effects of Earth's gravity. Now, what is gravity? People think that, when I drop my glasses, that's gravity. That's not gravity. That's an effect of gravity. Gravity is the warping of space-time. And that's important because people you hear the term thrown around a lot, but they don't realize that space and time are actually connected. They are one and the same. They're opposite sides, if you will, of the same coin. And so you can't have one without the other. And so you have this ability to create a bubble around you that insulates you from the warping of space-time, let's say in this case, Earth's gravity or something like that. Then the way you experience time inside that bubble is perhaps fundamentally different than the way you might experience space-time outside that bubble, because you're not subject to the effects of gravity, which would explain potentially why things don't need wings and why they don't need propulsion systems like that, right? So it's a completely different way of looking at how we understand physics and how we as humans move about. Everything we do is fundamentally force equals mass times acceleration. Right? F equals ma, right? Mass times acceleration, and you get force. This may be something a little bit different. This is not using, I said again, conventional thrust, or if I put Newtonian, right? If I push this way, I have an equal and opposite reaction that way, right? That's how.
Are there any theories as to how it's accomplishing this?
There is actually. Dr. Hal Puthoff about 3 years ago gave a speech on this, a very interesting lecture about this technology. And if you ever had the chance, you really should have him on, because he's an incredible human being. He's also the one who helped start the government's remote viewing program and a bunch of other stuff for the government. He's been involved in a lot of our nation's probably most classified efforts. But he was working with us on ATIP. He was one of our scientists. And he gave a lecture about 3 years ago to some other scientists about the specifics on how this is possible. I am not a scientist, so I'm definitely not going to speak on behalf of Hal Puthoff, because I'm sure I will muck it up. But I do recall a time when he came into our skiff and gave us about a 3-hour lecture on this unifying theory. And at that moment, it was very much for us the epiphany that a lot of us had been searching for. He's like, look, at the end of the day, this is how it's possible. And that was kind of this, wow. So it's really not.
Can you give us a moron's view of how it's possible? Like,
yeah.
Explain it to someone like me.
Yeah, well, I'm in that category, Joe. So, are we speaking the same language? Yes, sir. Yeah, single syllable grunts, right? Yeah. So you have an object like this cup on your table, and you want it to be insulated from the effects of Earth's gravity. So you create this bubble artificially using a certain energetic source at a certain frequency, and it interacts with certain material, certain metamaterial. And I got to be careful exactly what I say, but certain skin of the craft, this aluminum, the cup here, and all of a sudden, whoop, you have this bubble around you where what you see on the outside is not necessarily what you see on the inside. In fact, may do it, show more drawing there. Okay, forgive me, I'm not an artist, so I'm going to do this upside down for you, and then I'm going to kind of scoot this just a little here. All right, let's do this. So, unfortunately, I know your audience can't see this, but actually, it's probably
okay.
good.
Some people can. There's a video form of it.
Well,
I'm sure this will get on. It'll be on YouTube as well.
It's probably good that they don't, because I'm not an artist. But
Okay.
let's say this is a two-dimensional representation of a three-dimensional space,
Okay.
and in essence,
So what you've done is essentially you created a three-dimensional looking grid stacked. It looked like stacked boxes on top of each other.
yeah, right. And so you have location A and location B.
Mhm.
And let's say I go from Los Angeles to Baltimore.
Okay.
And it takes me 5 hours to fly at 500 miles an hour. That's a function of distance over time. And in essence, you can mark that linearly like this. So I fly, takes me 5 hours, there I am.
Okay.
If you had the ability to compress space-time, and not a lot, just a little bit, and you were able to allow these points to be a little closer together, now in essence, what took you, let's say, 5 hours and 500 miles an hour to do it, you can do it in 1 hour, and you can do it in much less time. But to the observer outside, because we're still in the same universe, we would see something like that. We would see this incredible hopscotching ability to, if you will, take a shortcut through space-time. And so what would appear to be instantaneous acceleration, hypersonic velocity, and other things, now becomes a reality. And so that is fundamentally what the scientists had discovered. And so it seems like science fiction, but when you understand the mathematics and some of the theorem that they've proposed, a lot of these other observables become possible.
Now in episode number 1465 of the Joe Rogan Experience, Rogan sits down with Tim Pool, veer off the beaten path, and dive into UFOs, mixing curiosity with humor as they question alien encounters, abduction stories, and whether the mysteries of the cosmos might be closer to reality than we think. Check this out.
Pentagon officially releases UFO. This is the tweet. It says, new Pentagon formally released 3 mysterious UFO videos captured by Navy pilots. The already leaked videos showed what DoD insists on calling unidentified aerial phenomena moving at incredible speeds and performing near impossible maneuvers. This is a weird subject because it's one of those subjects where people automatically dismiss it because it's been so touted by kooks. There's so many wacky fucks that have talked about UFOs that anybody talking about UFOs has to be out of their fucking mind. But then when you see these videos and you see them performing these impossible tasks, like these things are moving in a way that we've never seen anything move before, flipping upside down and sideways, moving at insane rates of speed. Like, they don't know what these are.
Yeah.
Aerial phenomena.
What's interesting, though, is I was reading one of these stories, and they passively mentioned that the sighting was near a U.S. naval like technology station of some sort, like a top secret development. And I'm like,
that could be one of two things: either it's developed by the people that are at that base, or they're monitoring the people that are at that base. These aircraft, we call them aircraft, are displaying characteristics that are not currently within the U.S. inventory nor any foreign inventory that we are aware of. Maybe they see the shit that's going down with China and all the ships being moved and like, listen, you fuckheads.
the aliens?
Yeah. Maybe they're like, listen, you fucking morons, you territorial apes.
I'd like to think that, but
You don't think so?
Manhattan Project, man. I mean, the U.S. has probably got some crazy motherfucking weapons. You know?
Could be, but the Manhattan Project was also coincidentally right after they started detonating bombs when the aliens started showing up.
That's what they think, right?
Yeah, well, that was when the bulk of U.S. sightings started jumping, and worldwide, I believe, too.
You know, maybe we've slowly been getting more and more information about this. I've been actually reading a lot of these stories over the past several months. More admissions from government, more release of documents, and more sightings. So there's been a big, I don't want to call it, well, a lot of people murmuring that April was going to be the month when we finally learn the truth. April's almost up.
It's almost up.
It's almost up.
We got like a few days.
Nah, man.
27th?
You know what I used?
More days is left.
Do you know?
30?
Do you know about what happened? You know about the O'Hare Airport sighting?
Which one's that?
So this was, I think, in like 2006 at Chicago's International O'Hare. A UFO came down and hovered above. I can't remember which terminal it was. It hovered for a few minutes, I think, and then shot straight, punched a hole in the clouds. Everybody saw it happen. Now, I had just quit working at O'Hare around this time when the sighting happened, so I had friends who were still there. I had a friend tell me that when this UFO came down, people on Mannheim Road, which is the road on the side of O'Hare, got out of their cars, like just stopped the light, got up, and were looking and staring at it. And that the people who were working where we worked for American Eagle Airlines, walked out of the rooms and were just staring at it float and then shoot up and punch a hole in the clouds. And you know what they said? Weather phenomenon. So there's a photo of it. A pilot took a photo of it. This is back when like very early phone cameras, so it's a very grainy, awful picture.
There it is right there.
That's not it. No, that's super fake. I think, no, these are all people trying to fake. It's really hard to find. That one might be it, but I don't think so. It barely looks like
Chicago O'Hare UFO sighting 2006. Is that it right there?
I do not believe those are it. No. So
We'll click on that article. See what it says, Jamie.
That's just some blog.
that one might be on the left, but so many people try exploiting this stuff for clicks and for views, and they make these fake photos. And
The link's not working?
I'll click on it a few times.
it was a very, very faint photo from the cockpit. It might be that one right there in the middle. On the on the left side.
Far left?
It might be that one. No, that's not it. That's not it. Well, there was a really crappy photo of it, and
That might be it.
that might be. It was out of the cockpit of a window. A pilot took a photo, and I wonder where have all the sightings gone since phones became ubiquitous. I mean, this is a simple, I guess excuse. The aliens, they're sentient. They know we have phones. They're like, okay, stop, decloaking or whatever. But I wonder if, why is it there were so many UFOs and then around the time cell phone cameras come out, they're gone.
Well, I think most people are full of shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think most people like to pretend they see things that don't really see things. But I don't think that excludes the possibility. It's not like it's not like these things are mutually exclusive. Like people are full of shit, therefore aliens don't exist. I think aliens could be real and people are full of shit. And I think that it's very rare that they visit us. But if they
Why
do,
would they?
well, how often do scientists go to the Congo to study chimps? I mean, how many people do they send to the bottom of the ocean to look for new life forms? How rare is it?
In Joe Rogan's podcast 2363, he and famous astrophysicist David Kipping confront the ultimate UFO mystery. Why, in a universe filled with billions of stars, do we see nothing? From hidden civilizations and the theory of grabby aliens, to the mind-bending idea that advanced life may not even be physical anymore, this conversation pushes the limits of what we think we know about extraterrestrial life. Let's take a look.
But when you hear about, particularly the stories of UAP or UFO encounters, the ones that intrigue me the most are the ones that are military pilots, that people that know the difference between a flock of birds and weird anomalies. If you're aware of the Tic Tac incident, So when you hear about things like that, and in my mind, there's a couple possibilities. One, super advanced, blacklisted military, some sort of a propulsion system that they've been working on for decades, completely in secrecy, and they're testing them off of areas where you have a lot of military activity, which is where these things do take place.
Yeah.
One of them was San Diego, that's the Nimitz, and the other one, the Ryan Graves footage, the stuff that they get, that's on the East Coast. But it's all in areas where they already do military training exercises with fighter jets. So it would make sense that that's where if this was the United States government doing that stuff, they would do that. But when you get back to like 2004, and you're talking about something that can go from 50,000 feet above sea level to sea level in less than a second, I think it's 7/8 of a second it went. You have visual confirmation, you have radar, you have video of it, you have two different jets that see this thing. No one understands what it is. It flies directly to their cat point where their meetup point was supposed to be. The whole thing's nuts.
Yeah, it's fast. I would love to know what the hell happened. Like everyone, I'm fascinated by it.
You can't throw it away. It's one of those ones you can't throw. I throw most of them away. Most of them, I love UFO stories because they're fun.
Yeah.
But most of them, could be anything.
Shady going on.
Could be anything. Could be people want attention. Could be military exercises. Could be mass delusion. Could be people just love to be special and have had some sort of an encounter, which they do. It gives them some sort of social credit to have some sort of an encounter with a thing, and they exaggerate, and people love to exaggerate.
Yeah, I'd love to make this ingestible to science. That's sort of been my goal. Like, how can science take a hold of this? And, when we do these experiments, I told you about this moon that I thought I found, and it turned out it was the instrument being crazy, right? Because sometimes instruments do crazy stuff that we don't understand. So the only way to figure that out is to get hold of the instrument, right? We need to get it in our labs and take that thing apart and test it and calibrate it, etc. And we don't have access to those military devices. It's all top secret. So we can't even do that experiment. But I can imagine thinking about how to do that. One of the big numbers we don't know, even with the visual reports, is the false positive rate. So this is a key number in science. Whenever you do an experiment, you need to know how often does the experiment produce something that's spurious, the false positive rate. Now, in the US, there's about 28,000 pilots across all military branches. And they fly something like 200 hours per year on average. So that's 5.6 million hours in the air every year in 1 year. Now, let's say a pilot, 1 in every 10,000 hours that they fly, they make a mistake. They misidentify a balloon for a UAP or whatever it is. 1 in 10,000. That's an incredibly low, by the way, error rate to have. But even then, you'd end up with 560 UAPs a year. Made that way, all spurious, all not real, just from human error. So the only way, and that's actually pretty similar to Project Blue Book. Project Blue Book found about 742 per year was being reported. So, I made that number up, 1 in 10,000, but we need to know what that number is. If it turns out there's an excess, like the error rate is 100,000, then that Project Blue Book number is super interesting. And it would be in excess. And we'd say we've detected something. There's a real anomaly here that we have to look at. But the problem is we don't know what that number is. I mean, you'd have to somehow put these pilots in like simulators or something where you have complete control conditions for thousands of hours and somehow test how often do they make these mistakes.
Also the problem, Project Blue Book was not an objective analysis of UFOs. They had a directive, and the directive was to discredit everything.
Yeah. But even so, I'm just giving you sort of ballpark. I mean, the NASA UAP task force was similar kind of numbers. You're getting like hundreds per year of these sorts of events, right? I don't think that's a crazy number to throw around. So the whole point is that whatever numbers you choose, you have to know the error rate of the experiment. And we could imagine making that legit and doing it. There's actually one of the recommendations of the task force, the NASA UAP task force, was to develop an app on people's phones, iPhones, because they have, magnometers on them, they have GPS, they have the camera, these high resolution images. So there's enough instrumentation on there, and it's all the same, and we understand that technology, that you could, have 10 people video the same UFO, and you'd be able to triangulate the position, the speed, get the distance to it. You'd get all that kind of information.
Right.
And so there is actually, I think there's an app called Enigma you can now download that does this. So there's some independent apps which have been developed to do.
Really?
Yeah.
Just about UAPs?
Yeah, for UAP spotting.
I wonder what they did with those in New Jersey when they were having all those stupid drone sightings.
I actually chatted to one of the developers, and they said, yeah, things were going crazy that week. Yeah,
they
said,
all lighting out all about it. That was so strange. That was so strange. That's one of those things where I feel like the government completely failed us in explaining to people is this some sort of top secret military thing? Is this another country? Is this some sort of a private business that wants to test how fantastic their drones are? Like, why?
Yeah.
Why is this happening? And why are you freaking everybody out? Like, what?
It really sucks that we live in an age of drones and so many like Starlink satellites, because if you see something in the sky now, your immediate reaction is that's probably, a human controlled vehicle. If you could go back to the 1940s, 1930s, then if you had UAP reports then, I think they'd be more convincing, because there's no that's pre-Sputnik, right? There shouldn't be anything in orbit of the Earth at that point,
Right.
So that would be more compelling. But of course, we can't rewind the tape.
Right, and all those stories like the Kenneth Arnold incident and all these different ones are just these anecdotal tales of people saying they saw things in the sky. And I'm not saying they're liars, but that's not enough. I need something.
Yeah, I think it depends what your goal is. If your goal is to convince yourself that aliens are out there because you saw a UFO, I think that's easy enough to do. But most people in that world, they want more than that. They want me to believe it. They want you to believe. They want everyone to believe it, to come along for the ride, right? It's like having a religious guy come knock your door, like, join my church. That it's not enough for them to have the personal belief. It has to grow. And so if you really want to convince everyone, that's going to naturally include the skeptics, the doubters. It's going to include the scientists. If you want to bring everyone in with you, then the standard of evidence is going to be pretty damn good. It's got to be really strong, and we're just not there, right? There's too many ways out, right?
If I was an alien civilization that wanted to observe Earth undisturbed, I'd make sure I didn't leave enough evidence for science to take me seriously.
Yeah,
that's what I would do.
Yeah.
I would never show myself. Why would I feel like if they can?
But then why the UFOs at all?
Because they're probably monitoring us. Like I would monitor us if I was a scientist from another planet. If imagine we leave this planet, we become interstellar, we evolve past war and all the horrible things that are holding us back right now. We reach a state of evolution 1 million years more advanced, and then we start to explore the galaxy for other habitable planets and we find something like us.
Yeah.
I mean, what would we go? All right, we got one.
Yeah.
I would also say, let's make sure that they don't fuck this up where they have to start back from scratch 3 billion years ago because they nuked themselves into oblivion and we have to wait till everything cools off before complex life can form again, which is it's a legitimate possibility.
Yeah.
With what we're dealing with today in 2025,
with
what's going on in Ukraine and Russia and Iran and
just the existence, as long as we have nukes,
yes,
there is a chance every year that some guy will push that button, right?
Yeah, every year there's a chance. And there's been multiple close calls throughout history, since 1945 on, multiple close calls. That could possibly have gone sideways at countless different planets where they recognize, if you let these territorial apes with thermonuclear weapons get to a point where the head ape is on fucking Adderall and decides to let it all go because he's got a bad heart valve and he's going to die anyway. These are all legitimate possibilities if you don't have a government structure that can protect people from the acts of one individual who goes mad.
Yeah.
If someone can go mad enough, and clearly many people did, to drop the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, that happened. We know human beings are capable of that.
Yeah, it was 80 years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah. Which is kind of wild that it hasn't happened since. But if that's possible, then it's also possible for just annihilation. It's a possible that they just start launching and then there's rubble and then you're left with roaches.
Yeah.
And that could have happened all throughout the universe. So there might be a thing where there's a protocol where you recognize as soon as they start figuring out nuclear technology, okay, this is the big one. We're no longer dealing with cannons and muskets. Now we've got something really crazy.
Yeah.
They're flying through the sky and dropping nuclear weapons out of propeller-powered airplanes. And they're doing it just 50 years after they invented the fucking airplane, which is even crazier. They went from inventing the airplane to dropping.
They really want to kill themselves.
Like, these people are wild. Like, it's just like Chip Nation. If you watch Chip Nation, they are so hyper aggressive and violent. That's us. That's our cousins. This is who we are. This is who we are. This is our timeline of evolution on our planet in Earth. And I would imagine there would be similar situations all throughout the galaxy, because I feel like the only way you really achieve hyper innovation is through competition. And the only way competition exists is it's got to be life or death. And it starts out life or death with predators and neighboring tribes, and eventually becomes cities and countries. And there's something has to motivate people to work 16 hours a day and develop the B-12 bomber.
Yeah.
Like, something has to take place. So that something, unfortunately, also leads itself to want to control resources, dominate people, crush opposition, and that's where it gets crazy. And I would imagine that's a formula, just like the formulation of solar systems and galaxies probably varies a lot all throughout the universe, but that formula is probably fairly stable, is that there has to be some form of really wild, aggressive kind of competition that leads them to this position.
Yeah.
There has to be a motivation to create AGI. Why would you do that when you have a log cabin, you're sipping tea, sitting out there, playing with your dog? Like, why are you doing that? Why are you making a non-biological super intelligence that may decide that you're obsolete? Doesn't make any sense. But
yeah, it's a double-edged sword, right? We have this tribalism in us, this competition, and that has undoubtedly led, like, all the greatest innovations in science often happen during war, right?
Yes.
I mean, you have all, like, the invention of radio, and
yes,
so many advances in avionics and flight happened during the wars, munitions, all this kind of stuff. So it pushes us, it drives us to innovate, to get one over our neighbors. And maybe that is the universal story of the universe. It's a double-edged sword. And that's the solution to the great filter. The silver lining of this would be, well, not for us necessarily, but the silver lining will be if other civilizations do this. There's kind of like this supernova effect in astronomy, and it's true for planets as well, that the easiest stars to discover are the supernovae, right? Because they just shine so freaking bright. They can outshine an entire galaxy, right? Because they're going nuts. It's a brief thing, only lasts for maybe a few months or so, but the star is outshining an entire freaking galaxy during that time. It is like a nuclear war going on inside that star. And similarly, the first planets we found, the hot Jupiters, are freaks. They are not normal things. They're like the loud, Lindsay Lohan in the room screaming at us. Like, they're just like super easy to see. Like, there's no way you can miss them. They're obnoxious planets, right? You can't not detect them. And so by analogy, we've seen this so many times in astronomy. The first thing we detect, the first example of something we detect, is often not typical. It's often that loud asshole version of the thing, right? And so maybe the first civilization we detect will be like that. And if they were on their deathbed, right, they're about to nuke each other to hell, they have a good motivation to reach out to us, right? Because they've got nothing to lose.
Right.
We might be like worried right now because we could see we've got a future ahead of us. But if you think this is it, I'm done. Like, what do you got to lose? You may as well send a message out saying, hey, we were here. This is our shit. Please help us if you can, because we're about to go to hell.
Well, there's probably a bunch of different kinds of intelligent beings on every planet. Just like there's people like you and me, and then there's war hawks that are working for the military-industrial complex right now. They're trying to figure out how to invade some country to get their natural gas. This is just, there's a bunch of different types of intelligent people, intelligent creatures here on Earth.
Yeah.
You would imagine there would be people out there in those planets that would go, guys, this is fucking terrible. We've got to figure out a way to at least create panspermia on some other planet and throw our DNA at some habitable spot somewhere in the galaxy. Yeah. There'd probably be a bunch of people that were it's not like everyone would be lockstep into self-destruction.
Well, the Starshot thing, I remember some team members talked about that. I was in some of the meetings and they said maybe we should like lace human DNA into the sail. So when it hits this planet, at least our DNA, because it's looking grim here, at least then there's like a seed of us.
I don't think it's looking grim. I think it's looking challenging. And I think this is how we're going to make it out of this with an improved version of civilization.